So guys, let me discuss what is the weightage that you will have in this chapter. If you want to be a centum achiever, you cannot skip this chapter. So I will tell you what exactly DBMS is all about. What is the meaning of logically related data, sir? Whenever you process the data, you will get the result. What is the advantages, what is the disadvantages that I have if I have the manual data processing? Hello everyone, I welcome all of you to the important session in which I will be discussing the database concepts, chapter number 13. It has got a very good weightage with respect to the marks. So guys, let me discuss what is the weightage that you will have in this chapter. So guys, you have one question from all the sections. If you want to be a centum achiever, you cannot skip this chapter. It's going to be very important because you will have a question in 1 mark and you will have a question in 2 mark, you will have a question in 3 and 5. All the sections will have one question. The weightage of this chapter is 11. If you just read only this chapter, you will be able to score 11 marks from this chapter easily. I will be discussing the important questions at the end of this chapter, so you can also go through that, but please remember this is going to be very important chapter if you want to be a centum achiever. So let me start with the content. What is that I'm going to discuss in this session? I will be discussing the introduction and also applications of database. Where exactly I will be using the database is what I will be calling it as a applications of database, and also origin of data, evolution of database. What is the reason, the concept of database started is what I will be discussing in the evolution of database, and also I will be discussing how exactly the data is getting processed in a cycle form, and I will be discussing the different terminologies that I use in database. That's very important that you should know before I start the database concept, right? Then after that, I'll be discussing the different data types that we have or do we use in DBMS is also I will be discussing, that is data types of DBMS. And then very important thing that what exactly DBMS is. Database is different, please understand. Database is different and DBMS is different. Database is different. Database management system is different, right? So I will tell you what exactly DBMS is all about. And also I will be discussing why do we read or why do we have database. That is what I will be calling it as features of database. So this is going to be very contented session for all of you. So please take a book next to you and make a note of the points which I am going to explain in today's session. Let me start with the first one. So introduction, what exactly the database is all about. Why should we have database? So all these questions will be answered in this slide. So guys, database is a collection of logically related data. Please understand this. Database is a collection of logically related data. I have to collect the data and I have to store it in one place. That is what I will call it as a database is a collection of data. But I am using logically related data. What is the meaning of logically related data, sir? For example, if I'm storing the information or I'm storing the data with respect to the student, I should store the data only with respect to or related to the student. I don't have to store the data which is related to the student's friend. You got my point? I'm just only storing the data with respect to the student's academics, not about the extra other activities which is doing outside the college. For example, how many girlfriends that student has got, so who is his neighbor, all those things I will not be storing which is not related, which is logically not related for academics. So please understand. So when I'm storing any data, only the logical related data I will be storing. That is the first important point that you should understand. So database is a collection of logical related data. That is what you have to understand. The one more point that you need to understand is I can create or I can store the data whatever I have in the real world. So I can create the database for all the sectors whatever I have in the real world. So that is very, very important. That is what you have to understand. Two things you should remember. Database is a collection of, come on, tell me. Database is a collection of logically related data, and you can create the database for all the aspects that I have in the real world. So that is the second point that you should remember. Known facts that can be recorded, and that I have implicit meaning, that is a second point that you should remember. Mini world or universe of discourse, everything you can store it in a database is what they are trying to explain. This is the important points that you should remember with respect to the database. And also it represents some of the aspects of real world. Whatever we are seeing in the real world, all those things you can represent it in the form of database is what they are trying to explain with this point. Then logical coherent collection of data with inherent meaning. So that is what we have discussed already. So whenever you are storing any data, it should have a relation from one data to another data. So that is the point that you should remember. And built for a specific purpose. Why do I store the data? Why do I store the student information? Because I want to access the information later. I want to access the data of that particular students later. I have a specific purpose. Why do I store the marks? Because I need to announce the result. So that is the reason that I am storing the data. There is a specific reason. If I store the data in the database, there should be a specific purpose. Point number one, let us understand and recollect the entire slide what we have discussed. I will just summarize it for all of you. Let's make it very simple and easy. So you should know the database definition. What is that? It is a collection of, it is a collection of logically related data. That is the first point you should remember. What is the second point? So can you all recollect what is the second point that we discussed? The known facts can be recorded. And it is a mini world. Mini world in the sense the entire thing you can store it in the database. And also you can store, real world aspects. You can also store real world aspects. Real world aspects in the sense whatever you have, whatever it is happening. So for each and everything you can create the database. And most important thing that you should remember is, please understand, so whenever you are making a database, it should have a specific purpose. By saying this, let me not waste much of your time with the introduction. Moving on to the next important thing, where exactly I use database. We all know that we store the data, that is logically related data, right? So from all the aspects of the real world, right? That is what we have discussed, and we create the database for a specific purpose. So where exactly we implement this database? So guys, I have listed out some of the areas where exactly that we implement the database. So we use the database in the banking sectors. You all know how exactly the banking sector is working with respect to the database. Suppose, imagine they don't have the database. What happens? I have the ATM card. I will withdraw 5,000 from the ATM machine, right? I have only 5,000 in my account. So what I will do? I will go to the ATM machine. I will withdraw 5,000. Then I will go back to the bank and I will write a check. Then I will withdraw 5,000 again. How many times I withdraw the money? 2 times, but I had only 5,000, right? This is the problem that I had if I don't have the database and if there is no update then and there, right? A lot of problems will happen if I don't have the database. Just imagine there is no database, there is no computer at all. So everything is manual in the bank. How exactly it will work, right? So they have to open the book. Especially they should go to your page and they should check what is the balance. Suppose if you had 1 lakh, so what will happen? Somebody can manipulate the writing, so 1 lakh they'll make it as 10,000. They'll erase it with the ink rubber. What will happen? So just imagine the importance of database in the banking sector. And also you have water meter billing, and then railway and airlines completely occupied. Everything is happening or the online, the digital marketing is happening. So if you book the tickets, prior to these many days, you will get this offer. So how do you book the tickets? How it will remember that you have booked? So all those things will be recorded in the database. How many seats are there? How many flights are flying to this destination? So all those information, where exactly you are storing? So I'm storing in the database. So without database, I can't imagine this industry. And also, guys, college. Imagine you will pass out and after 10 years you will come back. Sir, nandu marks card illa bitpitide. So can you just tell me, like, what is the marks that I have got in the test? What are the marks that I have scored in this subject? So what was the program that I had given on this particular date? Can you tell me the attendance status? All those things you will ask me after 10 years. Whatever the documents that I had, the attendance, can I keep that book as it is? No. So for that reason, I will be updating all your information in the database which I have in the college, right? So guys, the same way, even in the college, without database, it is very, very difficult. So the same way, I have credit card transaction, finance, sales, telecommunication, manufacturing, and human resource. All these fields, this is the areas where exactly I will be having my database. I can't imagine all these sectors without database. So guys, this is going to be very important question for 2 marks. Mention the applications of database. You just have to write 4 points from this. So you can also expect this question for 2 marks. Just mention 4 points and you can just write where exactly and how exactly you use this database in this applications. Moving on to the next topic, origin of data. So what is that? For origin of data, you have given only data and information. Yes. What is the meaning of origin of data? From where exactly I will get the data? How exactly I will get the data? In what form I will get the data is what I will call it as the origin of data. My dear students, I will get the data in multiple different forms, right? So it can be in the text form, it can be in the image form, it can be in the audio, it can be in the video, it can be in any format. Any raw fact is what I will call it as data. Any raw fact, it can be anything. So it can be any format. I will call that as a data. So fine, it's a raw fact that I have a data, but what is the meaning of information? What do you call it as information? So I have the raw fact. If I process that raw fact, then only I will call that as information. Please understand what is the meaning of information. Other day I used to give an example. See, imagine all of you are sitting inside the class. I will take the attendance. If I mark present, absent, so that is data. But if somebody asks me how many people are present, I have to perform some calculation. Performing some calculation is what I will call it as processing. Performing calculations is what I will call it as processing. If I process the data, I will be getting, so how many number of people are present and how many number of people are absent. So the people are present, the number of people are present and the number of people are absent is what I will call it as information. In short, what is the meaning of data? Data in the sense raw fact. What is the meaning of data? Data in the sense it is a raw fact. In what form you can have the data? It can be in any form. It can be in text, it can be in image, it can be audio, it can be video, anything. So data should be a raw fact. Data will be a raw fact. Whenever you process the data, you will get the result. Same way, you have the rice, you have the wheat or anything. If you put inside the flour mill, what do you get? The powder. So the powder is information. So whatever you put, that is what raw. That is what you call it as a raw grains, right? So same way, so raw facts. I will have a raw facts. If I put inside the flour machine, what will happen? Processing will happen. At the end, I will get the powder. So that is information. That's how you should understand. So origin, so it will happen in different multiple sources, right? So data will get generated in different multiple sources. I will gather all the data. I'll gather all the data from different multiple sources. That's what you have to understand. The next concept that I have is evolution. How exactly the evolution of database happened. Very interesting thing that you should know. Why do we have database? Yenakke sir, database anna concept yenakke bantu? What is the reason that we started database? Please understand, what is the reason that we started database? So I have listed some of the important points which tempted people to start the concept of database. Let's understand that. So we have two columns, right? So one is manual data processing, another one is computerized electronic data processing. What is the advantages, what is the disadvantages that I have if I have the manual data processing? So guys, manual data processing idre nange yenella problem ide, yenella advantages ide, I will be discussing from this side. And I have some computerized electrical, so what is that? Electronic data processing, this side. So what is the advantage that I have if I use the database? Consider this as a database management system, and this is manual processing thing, right? Let's start with the first point, the volume of the data. Volume of the data, whatever I'm trying to process, which is very limited. The amount of data that I'm trying to process is very limited in a given time. But it is not like that when it comes to this concept. The amount of data that you can process is more in a desired given time. So one solpa time alli ಎಷ್ಟು ಡೇಟಾನ ನೀವು process ಮಾಡ್ತೀರಾ? So when it comes to this, it is very less, but when it comes to this, it is more. Why? Because this is computer. This manually we are doing, we people are doing directly, but this is done by computer. So ಇಲ್ಲಿ ನಾನು ಕಡಿಮೆ ಡೇಟಾನ ಪ್ರೊಸೆಸ್ ಮಾಡ್ತೀನಿ, ಇಲ್ಲಿ ನಾನು ಜಾಸ್ತಿ ಡೇಟಾನ ಪ್ರೊಸೆಸ್ ಮಾಡ್ತೀನಿ. What is the second point that I have? Manual data processing is requires large quantity of paper. ಇಲ್ಲಿ ನಾನು ಪೇಪರ್ನ ಜಾಸ್ತಿ ಯೂಸ್ ಮಾಡ್ತೀನಿ, ಬಟ್ ಇಲ್ಲಿ ನಾನು ಕಡಿಮೆ ಪೇಪರ್ ಯೂಸ್ ಮಾಡ್ತೀನಿ. So that is the second point that you should understand. What is the third point that I have? Speed and accuracy. Speed and accuracy. Please remember, speed and accuracy at which the job is executed is limited. Speed and accuracy is limited, but it is not like that. It is faster when compared to that. So that is one more point that you should remember. What is the next one that I have? Labor cost is high. I will hire more people. Sir, 8,000 ಕೊಡ್ತೀನಿ ಬನ್ನಿ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಬರ್ತೀರಾ ಸರ್? 10,000 ಕೊಡ್ತೀನಿ ಬನ್ನಿ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಬರ್ತಾರಾ? ಇಲ್ಲ. They'll ask more. But speed and accuracy will be there? No. Speed and accuracy will not be there. So maximum they can work 8 hours. More than that, no. The computer can work 24 hours. So with accuracy, with speed. So that is the point that you should remember. So the labor cost is economical. Why? Because I do not require more people when I have this concept. So 4 ಜನ ಮಾಡೋ ಕೆಲಸನ ಒಬ್ಬರೇ ಮಾಡ್ತಾನೆ. Because I have systems. So that is what you need to understand. The storage medium is paper. Where exactly you are storing the data? You will store all the data, you will record all the data in paper, but here you will use this secondary storage. You will use hard disk, you will use pen drives, all those things I will call it as secondary storage. Please understand, ಜಾಸ್ತಿ amount of data na ಕಡಿಮೆ time ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಮಾಡಕ್ಕಾಗಲ್ಲ. So that you can do it here. What is the second point? Manual data processing requires quantity of papers, that is large quantity of papers. But here you do not require large amount of paperwork, right? So that is the second important point. Accuracy and speed will not be there, but accuracy and speed will be there. Of course it will be there, but it's in a less amount, but here it will be in a high amount. That is what you have to remember. Labor cost is high, labor cost is inexpensive, right? That is what you have to understand. The last point is, where do we store? We store it in paper, we store it in secondary storage memory when it comes to computerized electronic data processing. So this is what we call it as DBMS or database. With the help of database, we do all these things, right? So this is done manually. Manually, if we are doing, we have a lot of problems. To overcome from this problem, we have the solution if I am using a database management system or database, right? So there is a difference between DBMS and database, which I'll be discussing the coming slides. Moving on to the next one. So what is that I have? Data processing cycle. What is that I have? Data processing cycle. Please understand, we have a different phases of collecting the data and processing the data. I told you data is a raw fact. So data should undergo different stages to get the information. If I want to get the information out of data, it has to undergo a lot of different phases. So guys, that is very important for all of you to understand which are all the different phases it undergoes. Right? Let's start. The first phase is data collection. What is the first phase that I have? Data collection. Please understand, collection of data will happen from different multiple sources. I will be able to collect different heterogeneous data from different multiple sources. That is what you have to understand. What happens? For example, let's take my cousin is getting married. So if I want to get a guy, so what will happen? So I should inquire about the guy, right? So I'll ask him, I'll ask about him, in the workplace. I'll ask about him, with the friends, and I'll ask about him with the relatives. I'll collect the data from different multiple sources. So the people, what they give the data, so will be in different form. That is what you have to understand. I'll collect all the data. That is what I will call it as a data collection. That is what I will call it as a data collection. Then I have data input. So fine, I have collected all the data. I have to input. How do you input? With the help of keyboard. So I will start typing. I'll feed the data. That is what I will call it as a data input. So all the data will be a raw data. I have not yet processed. How I have collected, so that is what I have stored. So that data I will call it as a raw data. Please understand, that data is a raw data put into the computer using a keyboard, mouse or other devices. So how do you? So you have collected the data from various sources, then you have to put it into the computer, right? That is what I will call it as a data input. How do you input? With the help of the input devices. That is what you have to understand. What is the next one that I have? You have collected, you have stored it into the computer, then you have to process it, right? You have to analyze it, right? So the processing is a series of actions or the operations on the input data. That is what we call it as a data processing. You will perform some of the actions on the data to get the result out of it. So that is what we call it as a data processing. Sir, I have taken the rice. Rice is a raw fact. I have collected the rice from different sources. ನಮ್ಮ ಮನೇಲಿ ಒಂದು ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ತಗೊಂಡಿದ್ದೀನಿ, ನಮ್ಮ ಅಜ್ಜಿ ಮನೇಲಿ ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ತಗೊಂಡಿದ್ದೀನಿ. ಸೊ ಡಿಫ್ರೆಂಟ್ ಪ್ಲೇಸಸ್ಸಿಂದ ನಾನು ರೈಸ್ನ ತಗೊಂಡು ಬಂದಿದ್ದೀನಿ. ತಗೊಂಡು ಬಂದು ಫ್ಲೋರ್ ಮೆಷಿನ್ಗೆ ಹಾಕ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೀನಿ. ಸೊ ಫ್ಲೋರ್ ಮೆಷಿನ್ ಏನು ಮೇಲ್ಗಡೆ ಓಪನ್ ಇರುತ್ತಲ್ಲ, ಸೊ ಅದು ಇನ್ಪುಟ್. ಸೊ ಅದು ಇನ್ಪುಟ್. ಒಂದ್ಸತಿ ಒಳಗಡೆ ಹೋದರೆ ಗ್ರೈಂಡ್ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ. ಸೊ ದಟ್ ಈಸ್ ವಾಟ್ ವಿ ಕಾಲ್ ಇಟ್ as processing. Some actions are performed on the data that I have put. What is data? Data is a raw fact. So fine, I have processed my data. What will happen to the next one? So guys, data is stored in the bucket. Powder bartala. Where do you hold that powder? You will hold the bucket, or you will hold the tub, or you will hold the box, right? Yes, sir. That is what I will call it as the data storage. You have processed the data. So the processed data, where do you store? So the data and information should be stored in the memory. And it can be accessed whenever you want it. Sir, ನೀವೀಗ ರೈಸ್ ಪೌಡರ್ ಮಾಡಿಸ್ಕೊಂಡು ಬರ್ತೀರಾ. ಸೊ ಮಾಡಿಸ್ಕೊಂಡು ಬಂದ ತಕ್ಷಣ ಹಂಗೆ ತಿಂಡಿ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಂಡು ತಿಂದ್ಬಿಡ್ತೀರಾ? ಇಲ್ಲ, you will store it in some vessel, right? So that is what I will call it as a data storage. Guys, you will store the processed data in some memory, secondary storage memory. So you will be able to access whenever you want it. That's what you have to understand. So fine. Then after that, what is that? Output. Then you have output, and then you have communication. If you want to see the result, so you will be using the output and you will be able to communicate. Communication ability is increased. That is one of the advantage that you have right now in today's generation. So output, in the sense, whatever the data that you have, it will be displayed for you. So you can select what you want to see, and then it will be able to communicate. All these things, I will call it as a data processing cycle. Let's check what is data output and data communication in detail before I wind up this slide. The result obtained after processing, guys, the result obtained after processing, the data must be presented to the user. Guys, whatever the data that I have got, so I should be able to display that data in which the user will be able to understand. In which the user will be able to understand it clearly and visibly. So I might use the graph, or I might use a number format, or different any format. So the data, whatever the output, whatever I have got, I should be able to depict it to the user in a user-friendly format, so that it should not create any ambiguity. That is what I will call it as a data output. I can also give the output in two formats, that is in the hard copy or in the soft copy. That is what you have to remember. The next and the last one is communication. The computers are nowadays have communication ability, which increases the power. Guys, computer can able to communicate. Once the data is generated, it will only send us the message. It will only sends the message to communicate what exactly the result is all about. So that is one of the advantage that I have. So all these things, whatever the points that I have discussed, is what I will call it as a data processing cycle. Data processing cycle. So guys, please understand, I have the word called cycle. Cycle in the sense, it will keep on repeating the steps again and again until it satisfies some condition, right? So let's check with a diagram what I have. So guys, what is the first thing that I have? I will collect the data, then after that, whatever the data that I have collected, so it will go to the input. It will go to the input. Input devices will help me to store the data. Input devices will help me to store the data to the computer. Once the data is stored in the computer, the processing will happen. Some actions will be performed on the data. Actions will be performed on the data. Once the action is performed on the data, so guys, so it can be stored. It can be stored in the secondary devices, secondary storage devices, or it can also send it to the output. So make sure the output will be in the form of hard copy or in the soft copy, and also the result, whatever it is trying to display, it should not create any ambiguity to the user. It should select the best way to depict or to display the result. So once the output is arrived, so the computers are now able to communicate. So that is one of the advantage. Suppose whatever the processing has happened is not satisfied, again the same thing will happen. This is what I will call it as a cycle. This is what I will call it as a cycle. So until you get the desired output, the same steps will be repeated again and again. The same steps will be repeated again and again. This is what I will call it as a data processing cycle. ಡೇಟಾನ ಕಲೆಕ್ಟ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೀನಿ, ಕಲೆಕ್ಟ್ ಮಾಡಿದ್ಮೇಲೆ ಇನ್ಪುಟ್ ಮಾಡ್ತೀನಿ, ಇನ್ಪುಟ್ ಡಿವೈಸಸ್ ಯೂಸ್ ಮಾಡಿಕೊಂಡು ಏನಂದರೆ ಕಂಪ್ಯೂಟರ್ಗೆ ಸ್ಟೋರ್ ಮಾಡ್ತೀನಿ. ಸೊ ಕಂಪ್ಯೂಟರ್ಗೆ ಸ್ಟೋರ್ ಮಾಡಿದ್ಮೇಲೆ ಪ್ರೋಸೆಸ್ ಮಾಡ್ತೀನಿ, ಡೇಟಾನ ಪ್ರೋಸೆಸ್ ಮಾಡ್ತೀನಿ. ಪ್ರೋಸೆಸ್ ಹೆಂಗೆ ಮಾಡ್ತೀನಿ, ಇಟ್ ಈಸ್ ಯುವರ್ ಚಾಯ್ಸ್. ಏನು ಪ್ರೋಸೆಸ್ ಮಾಡಬೇಕು? ಫಾರ್ ಎಕ್ಸಾಂಪಲ್ ಅಡಿಷನ್ ಮಾಡಬೇಕು ಅಂದರೆ ನೀವು ಅಡಿಷನ್ ಫಾರ್ಮುಲಾ ಬರೀತೀರಾ, ಸಬ್ಸ್ಟ್ರಾಕ್ಷನ್ ಬರೀಬೇಕು ಅಂದರೆ ಸಬ್ಸ್ಟ್ರಾಕ್ಷನ್ ಫಾರ್ಮುಲಾ ಬರೀತೀರಾ. ಸೊ ಸೇಮ್ ವೇ ಯು ವಿಲ್ ಸೆಲೆಕ್ಟ್ ದ ಲಾಜಿಕ್, ವಾಟ್ ಎಕ್ಸಾಕ್ಟ್ಲಿ ದ ಪ್ರೋಸೆಸ್ ಶುಡ್ ಹ್ಯಾಪನ್. So after processing, so you can store it or you can display the output. So suppose if it is not happy, I mean, like, you know, if you're not happy with the result, so you communicate the same thing to the computer. Again, the cycle will happen one more time until it satisfies some condition. This is the cycle that you should remember. So moving on. So guys, I have some of the database terms. I have database terms. This is very, very important for all of you. So you need to remember all these things. This will be an important question for all of you. You can expect 1 marks question. They can also ask you what is tuples, what is rows, what is entity, and what is database. You can expect 1 marks question also. You can expect 2 marks question also, 3 marks and 5 marks. It's totally an important content that you should remember. Before I start this, let me just write one table for all of you. With the help of a table, I will explain all these things to all of you, right? So guys, let me just write a table for all of you. So how do I write? Okay, right. So guys, this is a table. This is a beautiful table that I am writing for all of you, right? So this is a rows that you have. Guys, observe this diagram clearly. So this is the student table. This is a student table, serial number, a name, right? I'll just write name, age, phone number, right? Serial number, name, age, phone number. So let's write 01, name is Ravi, and then I have age is 18, right? Phone number 91 dot dot. So 02 Ram 18 91 dot dot 0203 Raju. ಏನು ಸರ್ ಎಲ್ಲ ಆರಿಂದನೇ ತಗೋತಾ ಇದ್ದೀರಾ? Right, fine. This is my table. Just look at the table, guys. Let me start with the first one. So what is the first one? The basic unit. Guys, remember the basic unit of storage. What is file? The basic unit of storage is what I will call it as a file. What is that? The basic unit of storage in a computer system is what I will call it as a file. Fine. So whatever I store, the smallest unit in a computer system in a storage is what I will call it as a file. So fine. What is database then? We have already discussed the database. Database is a collection of logically related data. So fine. Let us not discuss this database again. So let's start the content from here. So please remember, what is file? File. If you are storing any data, the smallest individual unit in a database or in a computer system with respect to the storage is file. So fine, you have the clear idea about it. If you want to store any data, it will be in the form of file. Fine. So guys, now let us start with respect to the table. When it comes to the tables is what, this is what I will call it as a table. Able to see this? This is what I will call it as a table. What is this? Why are you calling this as a table, sir? Because this table is a combination of rows. This is what I will call it as a rows. Please understand. So whatever I have, so let me just change the color for all of you, right? So this is what I will call it as a rows. Guys, this is what I will call it as a rows. This is what I will call it as a rows. Then I have something like this side. This, if I take this, is what as I will call it as a column. This is row, this is column. Table is a combination of rows and columns. Table is a combination of rows and columns. That is what you have to remember. What is table? Table is a collection of data elements. How you have stored the data elements inside the table? In the form of rows and columns. So fine. Table height. What is the next one that you have? You have records. Please understand. A single entry in the table is called a record. This is what I will call it as a record. This one row, this is what I will call it as a single entry. So this is what I will call it as a record. The another name for the row is record. That is what you have to understand. So what is tuple? Record I will call it as tuple. I will call the record as tuple. I will call the row as tuples. That is what you have to remember. So 2-3 ನೇಮ್ ಇರುತ್ತಲ್ಲ ಸರ್ ನಿಮಗೆ, ಸೇಮ್ ಸರ್. ಪಾಪ ರೋ ಏನು ಮಾಡಿತ್ತು, ರೋಗುನು ಇದೆ. ರೋ, I will call this as row, I will call this as record, I will call this as tuple. Please remember, 3 ಹೆಸರು ಇಟ್ಟಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಅಜ್ಜಿ, ತಾತ, ಅಪ್ಪ, 3 ಜನನು ಒಂದೊಂದು ಹೆಸರು ಇಟ್ಬಿಟ್ಟಿದ್ದಾರೆ. So that is what you have to remember. Record, tuple, row, all are same. So you need to understand that. What is the next one that I have? Fields. Please understand. Each column is identified. Please understand. Each column is identified by a distinct header. That is what I will call it as a attribute. Sir, ಪ್ರತಿಯೊಂದು ಕಾಲಮ್ಗೂ ಒಂದು ಹೆಡರ್ ಅಂತ ಇರುತ್ತೆ. ಈ ಕಾಲಮ್ನ ಐಡೆಂಟಿಫೈ ಮಾಡೋದು ಈ ಹೆಡರ್ ಇಂದ. So this is what I will call it as a fields. Please understand field. What is this? ಪ್ರತಿಯೊಂದು ಕಾಲಮ್ಗೂ ಒಂದು ನೇಮ್. To identify this particular column we have given. So that is what we call it as a field. Another name for the field is what I will call it as a attribute. That is what you have to remember. What is domain? A set of values for an attribute. Attribute andre eno? Serial number is an attribute. Set of values for this attribute is this one. This is what I will call it as a domain. Right? So idikeno, this is an attribute. For this attribute I have some set of values. So this is domain. Domain. Understand this. Understood, everybody? So that is what I will call it as a domain. What is an entity? Sir, student is an entity. Student is an entity. Please understand. So, entity is an object such as table or form. Student is an entity. So, hope you got the clear idea about all the different concepts that I have in the database. This is what I will call it as a database terms. You should be very, very clear with this terms. Let's have a quick recap. So, table in the sense, you will have the data that is organized in the form of rows and columns. What is the record? So, one row, guys, that is what I will call it as a record. A single entry is what I will call it as a record. Row na nanu tuple antanu karitini, row na nanu record antanu karitini. Matte record na nanu row antanu karitini. So what is the next one that I have? So I have field. So column name iruttalla. So that is what I will call it as a field. Another name for that is attribute. So e attribute ge set of values iruttalla. So that is what I will call it as a domain. That is what I will call it as a domain. So entity andre eno table name na nanu entity anta karitini. That's what you have to understand. So guys, I think we have come to an end of this session. So hope I have given you the brief knowledge. Let's have a quick recap before we wind up this session. What is that we have discussed? So guys, we have discussed what is database. What is database? Please understand. Yen nenpitkobeku sir ee definition alli ee slide alli what is database anna definition bitre bere enu tale kedskobedi sir. Database andre enu, that is what you have to remember. Database is a collection of logical related data. That's it. So more than that you don't have to worry anything. So what is the next one that I have? Applications of database. ಎಲ್ಲೆಲ್ಲಿ ನೀವು ಡೇಟಾಬೇಸ್ನ ಯೂಸ್ ಮಾಡ್ತೀರಾ ಅನ್ನೋದನ್ನ ಜನರಲ್ ಆಗಿ ನೀವು 2 minutes ಕೂತ್ಕೊಂಡು ಯೋಚನೆ ಮಾಡಿಬಿಟ್ರೆ ಆರಾಮಾಗಿ ಆನ್ ಯೋರ್ ಓನ್ ಯು ಕ್ಯಾನ್ write and write how exactly you are using it. So then after that, what is the origin of data? Ellinda ನೀವು ಡೇಟಾನ ಕಲೆಕ್ಟ್ ಮಾಡ್ಕೋತಾ ಇದ್ದೀರಾ? You have multiple sources. You will be collecting the data different forms of raw facts. So you should be able to tell me the definition for data and also for the information. Data ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಏನು? Raw fact. Information ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಏನು? Process data. Then after that you have evolution of data. Why? What is the point that tempted me to have the database is what I have discussed. It's very, very interesting and important thing that you should remember. And then you have data processing cycles. So guys, remember this diagram. This is more than enough. So after writing this diagram, you should be able to explain what is collection, what is input, process and output, and also communication, along with that storage. If you are able to write this diagram and if you are able to write the points for this, that's more than enough with respect to the data processing cycle, right? Then after that you have different database terms. So guys, you should be able to identify all these things with the help of these terms. If you are able to do that, you are done, right? So guys, with this I have come to an end of the first session. Thank you very much. Take care of your family, take care of your parents, take care of yourself. Love me. Thank you. Bye bye.